This video is designed to show you arrays in Java. Some people thought I was saying raise, like more money, but no, arrays in Java. Arrays give us the ability to structure data in a way that we can't do with primitive types. So if we have a primitive type, let's say we want to store a test score. We might say int test1, and over in memory, let me show you some memory over here. Over in memory, that would set up a spot in memory labeled test1 with enough space to store an integer. Let's say we want to store a second test score, so we'd say int test2. And over here in memory, we could say test2 and enough spot to store an integer. Let's say we want to store a third test, test3, and again we'd go out in memory. It would grab enough spot to store an integer, and it would identify that spot of memory as test3. If we had 10 test scores, you can see that this program would quickly become very cumbersome. Arrays give us the ability to structure data in such a way that we can expand or shrink how much memory we're using and process through all that memory a lot more efficiently. So with arrays, if I wanted to store 3 test scores, I could do it as follows. I'd put the data type, int, and then follow that with a pair of square brackets. The square brackets are on the same key as the squiggly brace, but you don't have to press shift to get them. And then identify the name. I would put tests as the name I want to use. Now if at that point I put a semicolon, what would happen in memory? Well, here's my memory. What would happen in memory is we would have a variable called tests that has enough space for a reference that references that array, but we haven't created the array yet, so it's not referencing anything at this point. If we want to then tell it how big this array is going to be, we have to use the operator new, tests, new, int, and then let's say I want 3 test scores, so I put the number 3 in the square brackets as follows. That line could also be combined. Another way to put that, another way to put that would be int square brackets tests equals new int 3. And what that does in memory is it creates enough space for 3 integers. So arrays store homogeneous, all the same, homogeneous data, such as int, contiguously in memory. Contiguously, all right next to each other. So here's my array that's going to store 3 ints all right next to each other in memory. You have to use an index or a subscript. Those are 2 words that mean exactly the same thing. An index or a subscript to access each element in the array. We call a member of the array an element. And the subscripts always start at 0 in Java. Java uses something known as zero-based arrays. So the subscript of the first element is always 0. The subscript of the last element is 1 less than the number of elements that there are. So here we put the 3 in square brackets, indicating there are 3 elements, and my last subscript is 2, 3 minus 1. I like to think of this subscript or index as an offset from the beginning because this reference is actually a reference to the first element in the array. And so how much am I offset? I'm offset by 0 because it's the first one. If I want to get to the second one, I have to add 1. If I want to get to the third one, I have to add 2. And that's kind of a useful thing for me to think about. So if I want to store my test score, let's say tests sub 0, my first test score was a 63. I could say tests sub 0 equals 63, and over in memory that would put the value 63 in the first element. Tests sub 1 equals 87, that would put the value 87 in the second location, and so on. In the next video, I'll show you how to traverse the array and how to access all of the elements.